I truly regret saying such things as this age, 5 things you should keep a secret from your family. Have you ever said something in the heat of the moment only to wish you could take it back, not because it was wrong, but because of how it changed the way people saw you? Words have power, especially as we grow older. They shape our relationships, define how others treat us, and sometimes, without realizing it, we give away too much, our regrets, our struggles, our fears, only to later feel exposed, misunderstood, or even pitied. The truth is, after 60, some things are better left unsaid. Not out of secrecy, but out of wisdom. What we share can alter the way our children, grandchildren, and even close friends see us. One careless revelation can shift admiration into concern, respect into quiet sympathy, and in an instant the way they interact with us is never quite the same. In this video, I'll reveal 5 things you should never share with your family after 65, not to deceive but to protect your peace, dignity, and the strength of your relationships. If you're here, you're already on the path to wisdom. Like this video if you believe experience is life's greatest teacher, and subscribe for more insights on aging with strength and purpose. 1. Your deepest regrets. The great Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Regret is one of the heaviest burdens a person can carry, not because of what has happened, but because of the stories we replay in our minds over and over, wishing we could rewrite them. In ancient China, an old scholar named Liu Wen spent his final years in deep contemplation. He had been a man of great knowledge and influence, advising rulers and shaping policies, yet his heart carried an unshakable sorrow. On his deathbed, he confessed to a disciple, "I regret choosing duty over my children. My wisdom built empires, but I did not build time with those I loved." The disciple, knowing his master's pain, replied with words that would be remembered for centuries, "A lesson learned too late is still a lesson to be taught." Regret, no matter how deep, should not be a burden we pass down. Instead of allowing it to shape how others see us, we must use it to guide them, showing not where we failed, but what we have learned. I remember the exact moment I realized my words had changed how my son saw me. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon. We were sitting in my backyard, the warm scent of freshly cut grass mixing with the smell of his coffee. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the fence. He had come to visit, something he did less often than before, but enough to keep the guilt from creeping into our conversations. I don't know why I said it. Maybe it was the weight of old memories pressing against my chest, or maybe it was the silence between us that I felt the need to fill. But I said it. "I regret not spending more time with you when you were young." His face changed. It was so quick, so subtle, that most people wouldn't have noticed. But I did. He looked down at his coffee, stirring it slowly as if searching for the right words. "I didn't know you felt that way," he finally said. The air between us felt heavier. I thought I was sharing a moment of honesty, a truth I had carried for years. But instead of relief, I felt something else, a shift. He looked at me differently, not as the strong, steady father he had always known, but as someone who had failed, as someone who had lived with regret. Over the next few weeks I noticed the change. He started calling more often, checking in, asking if I needed anything. At first, I thought it was kindness, but then I realized it wasn't just love. It was guilt. That one moment, that one confession, had rewritten something in his mind. He no longer saw me as the man who had worked hard to provide for him, who had tried his best, who had loved him in the only way he knew how. He saw me as a man who had regrets, a man who had missed something irreplaceable. And now, whether he meant to or not, he was trying to make up for it. I had to make it right. So the next time he visited, I told him a story. "Do you remember your grandfather?" I asked. "Of course," he said. "Did you know that he once told me he regretted his life, that he wished he had done things differently?" My son looked surprised. He had always thought of his grandfather as a strong, wise man. He told me that he wished he had spent more time with me when I was young, that he had worked too much, been too distant. And do you know what that did to me? It made me question everything. It made me wonder if my childhood was lacking, if I had missed out on something I never even knew I needed. I let the words sink in. "I don't want you to feel that way," I continued. "I don't want my past to become your burden. The truth is, yes, I wish I had done some things differently. But I don't regret my life. I don't regret working hard to give you a future. I don't regret the choices I made with the knowledge I had at the time, so don't carry my regret as if it's your own." He was silent for a long time, then finally he nodded. "That day I learned something about regret. When we share it, we don't just release it from ourselves, we hand it to the people we love. We think we're unburdening our hearts, but sometimes we're only shifting the weight. That's why as I sit here now, thinking about all the things I've learned, I realize that wisdom isn't just about looking back, it's about looking forward. Instead of saying, I regret not spending enough time with my kids, I now say, I've learned that time with loved ones is priceless. Instead of dwelling on what I could have done differently, I focus on what I can do now, because the past is a closed door. No matter how many times you knock, no one is waiting on the other side. But the future? The future is an open road, waiting for you to step forward. So, if you're watching this, I have a question for you. Have you ever shared a regret that changed the way someone saw you? If you could go back, would you say it differently? Or would you, like me, choose to turn that regret into wisdom? Let me know in the comments. Let's learn from each other. Let's grow together. And if this message resonates with you, give this video a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it, because the greatest lessons in life are the ones we pass on, not as burdens but as gifts. 2. Your full financial situation. Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher, once said, "Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know." This lesson, often misunderstood, is not about secrecy, it is about wisdom. The moment you reveal too much, whether in wealth or in hardship, you change how people see you. There is an old story of a wealthy merchant in the Tang dynasty who in his later years chose to live modestly in a small village. When asked why he never spoke of his riches, he replied, "A full cup draws more attention than an empty one." Too much knowledge of one's gold invites either envy or expectation. His words remain true today. The moment we reveal the full weight of our financial situation, be it struggle or success, we risk shifting the very relationships we hold dear. I was never a rich man, but I worked hard. I built a life from the ground up, one brick at a time. My wife and I weren't extravagant, but we had enough. Enough to raise our children, enough to keep food on the table, enough to retire without too much worry. And yet one conversation, one moment of misplaced honesty, changed everything. It happened during a family dinner. My son, his wife, and their 2 children had come over for the weekend. It was a warm, comfortable evening, the kind where stories flowed as easily as the wine. We laughed about old times, shared memories of when he was young, and for a while it felt like nothing had changed. Then, the conversation turned to money. He mentioned how expensive things had become, how raising 2 kids, paying a mortgage, and saving for the future felt like an impossible balancing act. And in a moment of carelessness I sighed and said, "I know what you mean. Our savings aren't what they used to be either. With the cost of living, I sometimes worry about whether we'll have enough to last." I hadn't meant it as a plea for help, it was just a thought, a passing concern, an admission of the reality of growing older. But I saw it immediately in his face, a flicker of worry, the slight tightening of his jaw, the shift. That was the moment everything changed. The following week he called more often than usual. "Do you need anything, Dad?" he'd ask. At first I appreciated it, but then I noticed things I hadn't before. When we went out to eat, he would insist on paying. When I mentioned needing a small home repair, he'd show up with his toolbox before I could even finish my sentence. And when I tried to give my grandchildren small gifts, he'd gently refuse. And then one day, it happened. "Dad, if things are tight, maybe we should sit down and look at your finances together. Mom and I can help where we can." I froze. In that moment I realized what I had done. I had changed the way he saw me. I was no longer the man who had worked hard to provide for him, who had built a life with strength and resilience. I was now a burden, a concern, someone who needed help. And the worst part? He would never see me the same way again. I had spent my whole life teaching my son to be independent, to stand on his own, to make wise choices. And yet, with one careless confession, I had made him question whether I was still capable of doing the same. Of course, I had seen the opposite happen too. A friend of mine, Robert, had always been open about his wealth. He was proud of his success, of the investments he had made, of the comfortable life he had built. He had always shared his financial wins freely with his children and grandchildren. And do you know what happened? They stopped seeing him as a father, they started seeing him as a bank. At first it was small things, requests for help with a down payment, a loan to cover unexpected expenses. Then it became something more. Money was no longer a lesson or a tool, it was an expectation. And when Robert finally decided to say no, the visits became less frequent, the calls stopped, and slowly, the love he had always thought was unconditional began to feel more transactional. I made a choice that day. I called my son and told him, "I need you to forget what I said about money. I was just thinking aloud, not asking for help. Your mother and I are fine." I didn't want my relationship with him to become a financial equation, where love was measured in responsibilities and obligations. Instead, I shifted the conversation. I started sharing what I had learned rather than what I lacked. Instead of saying, "I worry about money," I said, "Here's how I made sure I was financially secure in retirement." Instead of saying, "Things are expensive these days," I said, "Let me tell you how we managed to raise you on a tight budget without ever feeling like we went without." Because that's the real value of experience, not in the struggles we carry, but in the lessons we pass down. Money is strange. It shapes relationships in ways we don't always realize. Say too much about your struggles, and you become a worry. Say too much about your wealth, and you become a resource. Either way, you risk losing something more valuable than money itself, the way people see you. So if you're watching this, let me ask you, have you ever shared something about money, your struggles, your successes, that changed the way someone treated you? Did it bring you closer together, or did it create a distance you never expected? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's learn from each other, because at the end of the day, the greatest wealth we can pass down isn't money, it's wisdom. And that's something no one can take away. If this message resonated with you, like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear it, because sometimes the most valuable lessons in life come not from what we give, but from what we choose not to say. 3. Negative opinions about family members. Confucius once said, "Speak only if it improves upon the silence." Words, once spoken, have a weight that cannot be lifted, a power that cannot be undone. In ancient Greece, a philosopher named Bias of Priene was asked, "What is the hardest thing to take back?" His answer, "The words that leave your lips." There is an old Chinese tale about a wise man who told his apprentice to pluck a chicken and let the feathers fly in the wind. The apprentice did so. Then the wise man said, "Now go and gather every feather." The apprentice protested, "That is impossible, the wind has carried them far and wide." The old man nodded, "So it is with words. And so it is with family. A single remark, spoken in frustration or disapproval, can scatter like those feathers, never to be fully retrieved. I never thought a simple comment could fracture a family, but it can. And it did. It was a few years ago during a holiday dinner. My son and his wife had been married for about 5 years. I always had my reservations about her, not because she was a bad woman, but because she was different from what I had imagined for him. She was outspoken, independent, and not the traditional type I had hoped he would marry. I had kept my thoughts to myself mostly, but that night, after a few glasses of wine, I let my guard slip. It started small, a passing comment about how things seem tense between you two lately. He shrugged it off, but I pressed on. "You know, I've never understood why she doesn't take better care of things at home. It just seems unfair to you." I saw the way his face changed. It was subtle, but it was there, the way he clenched his jaw, the way he suddenly avoided my gaze. "Dad," he said slowly, "that's not your concern." The conversation ended quickly after that, but the damage had already been done. Over the next few months, I noticed a shift. My son started calling less, visits became fewer, and when we did speak, there was a carefulness in his voice that hadn't been there before. A distance I couldn't quite bridge. I had always thought that my words carried weight, that my opinion as his father mattered. But I had never considered that sometimes an opinion, no matter how well-intentioned, is better left unsaid. It wasn't until much later that I learned the full impact of what I had done. One evening, after months of strained silence, he finally confronted me. "Dad, do you know what you did?" he asked. "I was just looking out for you," I replied. "No," he said, shaking his head. You made me question my marriage. You made me feel like I had to choose between defending my wife and respecting my father, and that's not fair." I sat there, stunned. I had never intended to put him in that position, but that's exactly what I had done. He wasn't asking me to love his wife the way he did. He was asking me to respect his choices. And I had failed him. I won't lie to you. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to explain that I had only meant to help, but I knew, deep down, that words would not fix this, so I did the hardest thing I have ever done. I listened, and then, instead of trying to justify myself, I said, "I'm sorry." I told him that I had spoken out of turn, that my role was not to judge his marriage but to support him in the life he had built. And slowly, over time, the distance between us began to heal. Here's what I've learned. A single opinion once spoken can create a divide that takes years to repair. We think we're helping when we point out what we see as flaws in the people our children choose. We think we're offering wisdom, but what we're really doing is planting doubt, doubt that lingers, doubt that can shake even the strongest foundations. So now, I choose my words carefully. Instead of saying, "I don't like how your spouse treats you," I ask, "Are you happy in your marriage?" Instead of saying, "I think you deserve better," I ask, "What makes you feel most supported in your relationship?" Because asking questions rather than making statements gives them the space to reflect without making them feel judged. It allows them to open up rather than shut down. I share this story because I know I am not alone. How many of us, with the best of intentions, have said something we later regretted? A comment about a son-in-law's job, a daughter's parenting style, a grandchild's choices. We do it because we care, because we want what's best for them. But sometimes, the greatest wisdom is in restraint. So, if you're watching this, let me ask you, have you ever said something about a family member that you later wished you hadn't? How did it change your relationship? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's learn from each other. Let's remind ourselves that sometimes, love is best shown not through our words but through our silence. And, if this message resonates with you, like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Because sometimes, the most important thing we can say is nothing at all. 4. To higher problems. The great Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Aging is inevitable. Illness, pain, and physical limitations come to us all. But how we talk about it, how we allow it to shape the way others see us, determines how we live the years we have left. There is an old Japanese story of a retired samurai who, despite his aging body, carried himself with the same dignity he had in his youth. One day a young man asked him, "Master, do you not feel sorrow in losing your strength?" The old warrior smiled. "Strength is not in the body but in the will. A man is only fragile if he believes himself to be." And so, when we speak of our health, we must choose our words wisely. We must not let illness define us, nor allow it to shape how others see us. I remember the exact moment I realized my health had changed the way my daughter saw me. It was a quiet afternoon. She had come over for coffee, just like she always did, and we sat in my living room, the afternoon light stretching long shadows across the walls. I had been feeling unwell that week, nothing serious, just the usual aches and pains that come with age, and so, without thinking, I began listing them. The stiffness in my back, the trouble sleeping, the new medication my doctor had prescribed. I didn't think much of it. I had always been honest with my children. But then, as I spoke, I saw it. That look. A softening in her expression, a tilt of the head, a shift from daughter visiting her father to caregiver watching over a fragile old man. She reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "Dad, maybe you should let me help out more," she said. There it was, the shift. And in that moment, I realized something painful. I had changed in her eyes. The days after that were different. She started calling more often, not to talk, but to check in. "Are you eating enough? Have you been to your doctor? Do you need me to pick anything up for you?" The conversations changed. Where we once talked about books, old memories, and life's big questions, now we talked about medications, symptoms, and doctor visits. I had become my health. I hadn't meant to, I hadn't wanted to, but in my honesty, in my casual complaints, I had allowed it to happen. I knew I had to fix it. So the next time she visited, I did something different. She asked how I was feeling, and instead of listing every ache and pain, I smiled and said, "I'm doing what I can to stay strong and enjoy life." She looked surprised at first, then relieved, and slowly over time our conversations began to change back. We talked about her job, my grandson's latest antics, the books we were reading. Yes, I still told her the important things, when I had a doctor's appointment, if there was something she truly needed to know, but I stopped letting my health be the center of our conversations, and in doing so, I reclaimed something important, the way she saw me. Aging is not a weakness. It is not something to be pitied, but if we talk about nothing but our ailments, if we allow our health to define our conversations, we risk becoming something we never intended to be, fragile in the eyes of the people we love. So now, I choose my words carefully. Instead of saying, "My health is getting worse," I say, "I'm doing my best to stay strong." Instead of saying, "I can't do the things I used to," I say, "I'm finding new ways to enjoy life." Because strength is not in the body, it is in the will. So let me ask you, have you ever felt like your health changed the way your family saw you? How did you handle it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's remind each other that growing older does not mean growing weaker. And if this message resonates with you, like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because in the end, we are not just our bodies, we are our stories. And those stories deserve to be told with strength. 5. Your fears and anxieties. The great Greek philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Fear is a natural part of life, especially as we age. We fear losing our independence, our loved ones, even ourselves. But how we express that fear determines whether it becomes a burden or a lesson. There is an old Indian fable about a farmer who worried every day about his crops. He feared the rain would wash them away, or that the sun would scorch them. One day a wise man told him, "Your worry does not stop the storm, it only stops you from enjoying the sunlight." That lesson has stayed with me, because the truth is, fear will always be there. But if we let it take over our conversations, if we speak of nothing but our worries, we risk becoming someone people feel obligated to comfort, rather than someone they simply enjoy being around. It happens slowly, so slowly I didn't see it at first. At one time, my son and I could talk about anything. We'd sit on my porch, sip coffee, and swap stories, his from work, mine from the past. We'd laugh, we'd joke, but then I let my fears slip into our conversations. I started with small things, news about rising crime, worries about getting older, concerns about living alone. At first he nodded, reassured me, but then I noticed the way his smile faded faster, the way his eyes looked heavier. One day after I mentioned how lonely the house felt at night, he sighed and rubbed his temples. "Dad," he said gently, "I don't know what to say anymore." It hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't realized how much I had been loading my fears onto him, how every conversation had started to feel like a weight he had to carry. I started noticing it more after that. When I called, he hesitated before answering, as if bracing himself. When he visited, he asked how I was feeling before asking about anything else. I could see it in his face, the worry, the exhaustion. He wasn't pulling away because he didn't care. He was pulling away because he didn't know how to fix what I was feeling. And that was when I understood. I had made my fear his burden. I didn't want my son to feel that way. I didn't want him to dread our conversations. So I made a choice. The next time he visited, I didn't start with my worries, I started with something different. "I've been reading about community classes," I said. "I think I might take up painting. I was never much of an artist, but who knows?" He looked surprised at first. Then he smiled. A real smile. I still shared my thoughts, but instead of dumping my fears on him, I focused on solutions. Instead of saying I'm scared of being alone, I said, I'm finding ways to stay connected. Instead of saying the world is getting worse, I said, I'm learning how to adapt to the changes. And slowly, something beautiful happened. Our conversations became lighter again. He started laughing more, visiting more. He didn't feel like he had to fix me anymore, he just enjoyed spending time with me. I share this because I know I am not alone. We all have fears. It is part of aging. But what we do with those fears, that is our choice. If we speak of nothing but our worries, people stop seeing us as wise elders. They start seeing us as fragile, as something to be protected, managed, or even avoided. But when we balance our fears with hope, when we focus on solutions rather than anxieties, we remain strong in the eyes of those who love us. So let me ask you, have you ever caught yourself talking about fear more than hope? How did it change the way others responded to you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's remind each other that even in uncertainty, we can still choose strength. And if this message resonates with you, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear it, because fear may be a part of life, but it should never be what defines us. Aging brings wisdom, but it also brings choices. Choices about what we say, how we share, and how we allow others to see us. The truth is, the way we speak shapes the way our families treat us. Our words can either keep us strong in their eyes or make us seem fragile, dependent, or even burdensome. That's why knowing what to hold back isn't about secrecy, it's about wisdom. It's about protecting our dignity, our peace, and our relationships. Because in the end, we are not just our regrets, our finances, our opinions, our health, or our fears. We are the sum of our experiences, our lessons, and our resilience. And the greatest gift we can give our loved ones isn't just our presence, it's the strength and grace with which we live. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever shared something with family and later wished you had said it differently? How did it change things? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else on the same journey. And if this message resonated with you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, because the best lessons in life are the ones we share, not out of fear, but out of wisdom.